the second biblical leader, which is Abraham, and Diana is going to lead us in that one. So let's all pay attention and be blessed.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about Abraham, the father of faith. I don't know if anyone considers him the father of faith, but I do. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm just gonna, I don't know, guys, this is so nerve-wracking. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide, right? So, an introduction to Abraham. So, Abraham is introduced to us in the book of Genesis. So, if we could all go to Genesis chapter 12. Keith, please read Genesis chapter 12, 2 to 3. Is Keith
Yes, I'm here. Genesis chapter 12.
2 to 3.
Okay. Okay, verse 2 reads, "And I'll make of thee a great nation, and I'll bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I'll bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed."
Okay, thanks. So this is the text we are going to be using. So just keep it in mind as I continue. Okay, so what do you put it? Okay. Hectic. So Abraham, like I said, is introduced to us in the book of Genesis, and God commanded him to leave where his father's land. That's where he used to stay. So God tells him to leave everything that he knows and everything that he has behind and go start afresh somewhere else. And he does this, right? And then when he leaves, he settles in this new place with his wife, Sarah, right? And they don't have children and they're quite old. So God, what do you say? So God called Abraham, right? Called him for a specific job, which was now to move from his father's land to this new land. And he's given an instruction, go to this land with your wife Sarah and do what I say, which is be obedient to me, and you will be blessed, like we just read in the text, right? So they leave, they go settle, and then obviously they don't immediately get this blessing that God promises them. So now Sarah, who really wants a child, decides to now tell Abraham to have a child with the maid, Hagar, which he does, right? And then he gets pregnant and has called Ishmael, right? So I have a question for you guys. Since I mentioned that Abraham is the father of faith, did he exhibit faith when he decided to have a child with Hagar instead of wait for what the Lord told him, which was that he would have his own children with Sarah, even though they were really old. Yes, anyone to answer my question?
Okay, I'm kind of in between, and in the sense that I feel like yes, he had faith, but at the same time, he thought of his own methods of fulfilling what God had promised him. So I'd say he had faith in the promise, but he had his own ways of fulfilling the promise. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay. For me, it's a total failure of faith, because I believe faith is believing what God says as it is, taking God as at His word. So trying to make other ways to something that you think is good for you, I think that's the failure part of it.
So
Yeah.
so he did not exhibit faith.
Yeah. That's my thinking.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. Awesome. But let's just remember, I've we associate like Abraham and his life story as like a faith blueprint. Like most of the time, if someone asks for advice or they want to know more about faith, we usually direct them to Abraham's story, because eventually, after all the obstacles and hurdles, Abraham and Sarah finally did have their child. So that's where we send them, to go read in the Bible to know more about faith. But then also, when I was reading, I realized, like we just established, he did not exhibit faith when he decided to, lean on his own understanding. So let's just have that in mind as I move on. Okay, who is Abraham? Abraham is best known for the depth of his faith, like we've been talking about. In the book of Genesis, he obeys unquestioningly the commands of God. He's ready to follow God's order to sacrifice Isaac, a test of his faith, though in the end, God substitutes a ram for his son. Right? That Abraham has faith, and it says here unquestioningly. So back to him having a child with this maid lady. When I read the story, I got the fact that Sarah asked Abraham to have the child with the maid. He didn't come up with this idea on his own. So basically, he did have faith. She just didn't have the faith. So her lack of faith rubbed off on his faith, if you get what I'm saying. So technically, he still had faith. But then Sarah kind of distorted, his faith. I don't know if I'm making sense. I need like someone to say something.
I think I'll take it from the previous contribution as well. That even Sarah was the one who came up with this idea.
Yes.
The promise had said, you and your wife at this time next year you will have a child. But then they want to substitute Sarai and put Rebecca. So it's a total failure of both. Though one came up with the idea, because Abraham could have said no. The Lord said, you and I are going to have a child, because that was the promise.
Yeah.
But then them substituting one party of the promise, that was altering the promise altogether, having dealt in the promise of God saying, you and your wife, even though you're old, you're going to have a child.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So this is a picture I got from the internet. Apparently, this guy with the beard is Abraham, and then the lady with the child is Hagar and her son, and then the lady who's giving us her bag is Sarah. So, when I looked at this picture, I just like got this what do you call it? Because our growth groups, we did have a discussion on faith like a couple of weeks ago. And when I looked at this picture, I realized that, and since we're doing leaders in the Bible, I realized that as a leader, your actions have consequences that don't only affect you, they affect the people around you. So in in Abraham disobeying or having lack of faith in God, he put other people in his mess, let's say, because um, Sarah was affected as well because Hagar was treating her badly. And then Hagar was also affected because this man did not want to be with her, but he had a child with her and all that stuff. So basically, the gist of this thing is that as a leader, your actions have consequences that affect everyone around you and not just you, right? Moving on. Influence and importance. Abraham believed and trusted God, and from there, Abraham's wife Sarah trusted him. Abraham believed omnipotent, me and my words, benevolent, and omniscient, right? So I'm just gonna define some of these words just in case someone that's not new. So omnipresent means present everywhere at the same time. You can read about this in Proverbs 15, verse 3. Omnipotent, having unlimited power. You can read about this in Romans 1, verse 20. Omnibenevolent, all loving. You can read about this in Psalms 18, verse 30. And then omniscient is knowing everything. It can be found in Psalms 143, verse 5. Right. So this this is how Abraham saw God, like in all these words. He saw him this way. That's why he had faith, because he knew that God was all loving and forgiving, that God had unlimited power. That's why he believed that even though God said, go kill your son, he did it. He didn't do it, but he almost did it. This is because he knew that God was in his corner, let's say. Okay, right. Where was I? Okay, the verse that Keith read, can you read it again?
Okay. Genesis 12, right?
Chapter 12. Yes, 2 to 3.
Verse 3 to 5, right?
2 to
3 and
3.
4. 2 to 3.
2 to 3.
Okay. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. I'll bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed.
Awesome. So, Keith, who else from our growth group is in this meeting? Is it just you?
Yeah, David is here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
You
Tam
guys
is also
remember
here.
we did the blessed to be a blessing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you obviously read now about I will bless those who bless you, right?
Yes.
So I believe, or we spoke about how if you have faith, if you have faith, you will be blessed, and if you are blessed, you will be a blessing. So just like how Abraham had faith, just like Abraham had faith that him and Sarah would have the child eventually, and how he had the child and then he had to go sacrifice the child, but then he didn't have to sacrifice the child because yeah. So basically, as you have faith, you are blessed, and you are blessed, you become a blessing to others, right? So this is how I like interpreted this whole story, if that makes sense. I don't know. Yeah. Am I making sense? Like, if you don't know what I'm saying, please tell me so I can just like rephrase, repeat, remove.
Now we get you.
Okay. Right. Okay. Where was I? Okay. Um, what do we learn from Abraham? We learn a lot. Obedience. Um, yeah, you guys can just resay it. So we learn obedience. We learn leadership. Um, we also learn that we should listen, to God when He gives us a command or like an instruction. And last week, I don't know if I'm going to say the name right, but Ngoni presented and he said, godly leaders do what's right despite the circumstance. And I wrote this down. As a leader, you can be the only one doing what's right despite the influence of others, um, which is also exhibited in Abraham. Like, yeah. And then he says leaders also make mistakes. Like, he made the mistake of having a child before he was supposed to, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he's a good leader. um, Good leaders acknowledge their mistakes and they learn from them, they don't repeat, hopefully they don't repeat their mistakes. And he also mentioned that good leaders listen to instructions, which Abraham did, wavering. And then last slide. Oh my gosh, last slide. Discussion question. So Keith is gonna read the passage again, and then each of us is gonna just use the questions that are on the screen to answer. I mean, also meditate on the passage that he's going to read, and then a few of us can just share so we can all get like a different perspective of what has been shared. Yes. Okay. You can read again.
Okay, I'm reading from Genesis 12. This is 2 and 3. It says, I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed.
Okay, great. So we can all just like take a minute or two to just answer the question according to the passage. that has been read several times.
We can contribute as well now.
Yes.
Okay. What I'm taking from Abraham is, I think one of his greatest traits, and something that God had to chisel and make perfect out of him, was his ability to listen. From the get-go, we see Abraham listening, and it seems he's a good listener. He takes instructions as they come, but then as we go on, God gives him a promise, and he diverts from the blueprint God has given him, the promise God has given him, and him and his wife come up with their own ideas. Like you said, at the end of the day, we see that his actions as the head of the house divided the home. So what I learned from that part was, as a leader, your actions you might think you're doing the right thing, but then you might divide the people you're supposed to lead into two groups instead of uniting them, because a leader is supposed to unite. And those consequences are still there until today. You know, some claim Ishmael is the son of the promise because he was the firstborn. Others will be like, no, he's not, because it was supposed to be Isaac. So Isaac is the promised son. You get what I mean? So it's a small mistake, but big consequences. So as leaders, I believe the life of Abraham in this part teaches us that we have to be careful of our decisions, because we don't know to what extent and who it might affect.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, may I edit something?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, is that Abraham just, but when he was departed from his father's house, so there's no any destination. God just said to the Abraham, so after you just departed from your house of your father, and then I will show you where you should go. It means God didn't said to any destination. So that's why God just have considered that Abraham is so faithful, and he is the father of faith, because he didn't know that it means he should be the wonder in the wilderness. He was the settlement is people, right, in Ur first. So he's maybe was alive and everything is so stable, in their hometown. But he should depart from the stable and the familiar places. It means it is also a challenge for the Abraham and his families to depart from their familiar places. But he just obeyed the God's commandment and God's promise. That's why the God has considered he is so faithful. And also, when he get the promise of the offspring, when he was 75 years old, right? After 25 years later, he got Abraham, the promised offspring from God. So during the 25 years, he did what he wanted to do. He just appointed the oldest servant as his the stepson, right? And also he just gave the Hagar to his wife as not the concubine, the kind of his second wife, to just bear the offspring by his own desire. Even though he just failed to reach the God's promise, he is stumbling to reach the God's promise. God, he is still just obey and have a faith of God's promise. When he had received any information and the word from God, he already resent his the bad desire and the behavior what about his promise, God's promise. And also, when he just offered the idol to God on the altar, so how, even though he has the faith to God, how the fathers to gave maybe an offering as their his son as an offering. It's difficult, and so maybe if I were theirs, I can't do that. But Abraham has a faith like this. If you see the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, from 17 through the 19, it's like this. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered Isaac, and he who had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, in Isaac your seed shall be called. 19, concluding that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from which he also received him in a figurative sense. It means that Abraham has noticed that. So God just already gave the offspring according to his will. Also, even though I just offered my son as an offering for God, God just has a power to just raise my son up from the dead. That's why he has also the faithful in front of people. So it is also important, that one. Abraham has the thought, if God promised to do something for us, God is so faithful to just maybe faithful to do what he just promised to us. So just like this, we also have the belief, if God has proclaimed his promise through the Bible and through the prophet, and so we should believe it, because he is also faithful to just maybe accomplish his promises. It is also a faithful lessons from the Abraham, what we have read and what we have learned. That's it.
Okay, thank you for your contribution, Pastor. Does anyone else want to contribute?
Maybe another point from Abraham's later life. As we read, we know it gets to a point where him and his nephew, they're so wealthy to an extent that they both can't have their flock in the same place, because their herders are now fighting for pastures and stuff. And Abraham ends up telling the nephew that you can choose which direction you want to go. If you go this way, I'll go the other direction. If you go that way, I'll go this way. Something I took from that, from a leadership point of view, is, especially with the theme we have this year of PCM, which is Peace Community Mental. I saw the mental part of Abraham, because he groomed and trained his nephew in a way that he was confident that even if they're going in different directions, he'll be able to survive and be able to prosper. And we even see certain traits that Abraham had being exhibited in the nephew, because if we remember, when Abraham was given the promise, he saw men coming. The first thing he did was run to them, welcome them, give them food. You know, that courtesy he had for people. The same thing we see the nephew doing later on when Sodom is about to be destroyed. He goes to them, welcomes them, gives them shelter. So we see that a good leader is able to mentor and give good and pass on good traits to those that are around him. And that's another important thing I noticed about Abraham, of the people around him. They always took the best out of what he did.
He has shown the servant leadership for his nephew.
Yes, the servant leadership part as well, because a good leader doesn't choose. He'll let you choose, then him last. So that sacrifice, because he knew his nephew I'm sure Sodom well, he had the best pastures. And Abraham knew that he could have said, no, I'm going towards this direction because it is the best pastures, but he let his nephew take the first choice. So yeah, he was a good leader.
Yeah, I like that point of the mentorship. It's very important to have a mentor, especially when it comes to like people like us, students in the PCM. It's always good to have someone that can show you the ropes and like do what a mentor does. Yeah. So yeah, that was a good point.
And also we have learned that city is so cursed in the so idolatry, so spread around the city. So Abraham just prayed to God to, if there are the 50, the 45, and the 40, 30, 20, 10 people, the righteousness in that city, God is willing to destroy that city. God just always just resent. If I can't find the 10 people, 10 righteous people in that city, I will not destroy that city. It means this guy Abraham, even though he is not related with the destroyer of Sodom and Gomorrah, but he intercede for the Sodom and Gomorrah and pray as a Christian, as a leader of the congregation. So that's why we, and also though we are maybe we are also leader of the church and the leader of the family and the leader of the small group, right? So as a leaders, we should pray for others to come, even though they are not as faithful, they are not as regularly attend our church. We should pray for God as your intercession.